And welcome everybody to the Messengers Podcast. I am Chris Searles. With me today is Rob Seifert, our creative director here at Searles Graphics. Say hi to the people, Rob.
Hey, everybody.
Today we are talking about clarity in your advertising. We deal with this in different forms, I think, all the time, whether it's for clients, whether it's for ourselves. There's a fight that tends to occur, and again, even with ourselves, even internally, in terms of trying to be creative or trying to do too much in an ad or in a marketing piece, rather than just kind of being clear and concise and to the point and having focus. I know from our standpoint, usually internally, it's Rob who is significantly more creative than I am. And, me who, coming from a background in software engineering, am a little more linear in my thought process and just a lot more kind of structured and organized, I guess. Well, I'm not really that organized, but in the way that I think versus the way that you think, we tend to come from a completely different approach in terms of what we do. And it's not that I don't want to be creative, and it's not that you don't want to be clear and concise and to the point. Sometimes you end up going a little too far on the creative side, and I end up going a little too far on the simplistic side, which I think is why it tends to work a lot, when we collaborate, because we kind of tend to be able to come together and meet in the middle and find a way to do something that's creative but also clear and to the point. And we see it a lot in clients too, where sometimes it's not really that fight between creativity and clarity. It's a fight in focus, in trying to say, we're not going to jam pack every service that you do into this tiny little ad, because it's just ends up overwhelming the eye and the mind, and there is no focus, and there's nothing that's going to draw somebody's attention to it, and we definitely have to have that conversation a lot too.
Sure. I mean, just getting back to what you were saying initially, there's a huge benefit, I think, to collaboration between two people like us that think differently in terms of creativity and clarity. I learned about it when I went to college. There was actually a course about it, and it was taught by two professors, and one was an art director, and the other one was an account manager. And they taught together this course and talked about this specifically, about the battle between them, and that you get the best product from looking at it from both sides, and that it's essential. Most ad agencies deal with this on a consistent basis, where you can't really let a creative have free reign because the message can become too convoluted, but you want it to be interesting and creative and exciting in the same respect.
Yeah, look at I think one of the best examples across the board is Geico, right? And what they do with their advertising. Everything it's super creative. It's interesting. The whole caveman commercial, that whole concept was extremely creative in its kind of design and in its execution. It's just fantastic across the board. But at the same time, you can save 15% or more, in 10 minutes or whatever, the line is, 10 minutes could save you 15% or more in your car insurance. Is just, you can't get any more clear than that. So there's something that grabs your attention, and there's something creative that's going to be memorable and sticky. And then there's the portion of it that's just clear, straightforward, to the point. It's not, we're not overcomplicating anything. It's, you can save money on your car insurance just if you give us 10 minutes.
Yeah. Bringing that up, it reminds me of I had worked on early when I worked here. in my creative years when I was a young
Was
man.
that like 40, 50 years ago?
Longer than that. We had a local bank that was an account, and they wanted us to do a brochure for people to update their information. So I created a brochure, and on the cover of the brochure, I had a picture of a werewolf, and it said, "Go through any changes lately," something to that effect. The copy said, but it was a bank, so.
Yeah.
The bank loved the creativity of it, but they just felt it was, too much to put on their counters in the bank. A picture of a werewolf on a brochure to update information. So,
Well, we got in trouble a little bit one time. Not really in trouble, but
right.
we had
One time.
Well, it could have been more than that, but where we did a. It was so ridiculous in its concept that for anybody to take it seriously, I think. But I can see, I guess, where we had somebody complain about it, but we did we had done our Ugly Baby campaign, right, which was how do you tell somebody their baby's ugly, and we kind of that was our take on when clients come in and they have something that they've worked really hard on, a logo or a look or a brand, and objectively anybody that looked at it knows it's ugly.
It's poorly done.
Really
right?
not going to do it. But this person is extremely proud of it, and kind of how do you navigate that situation?
Right.
And
how do you tell them their baby is ugly?
Right. That was so we had done that campaign.
Right.
And then we did. I'm trying to remember what the image I have in my head. I'm trying to remember what the headline was around it.
For the dog bride.
The wedding, yeah.
Yeah, that was the image.
The image was basically we took a bride in a gown and completely removed her head and put a bulldog in there. It was
kind of I think I remember being along the same lines where it was
it was something like
if you're making a commitment to an advertising campaign or a marketing campaign, that you don't want a ugly bride, kind of like an ugly baby. You don't want to be married to an ugly bride.
You don't want to be married to something that's not.
That was a few years ago.
Yeah.
Now really wouldn't fly, but
it was 10 years ago maybe, but
right.
But again, it was so ridiculous in its execution that we kind of felt like, come on, we're not shaming any. It's not like we took a real woman and decided and everybody here found it. I mean, even the women that work here thought it was funny and creative and
Photoshop fun.
But it's certainly one of those things where
you can see in
maybe
retrospect.
and maybe the creativity in that maybe kind of took over in terms of the clarity of the message that we really wanted to get through, and but that's I don't know. It's always one that I can remember that we did. Well,
maybe that one.
Nobody took offense to the ugly baby.
Yeah.
And we really doctored that baby up pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I see where you can certainly get in more trouble on the creative end than being more clear with your advertising,
Yeah, it was like the, I think another one of my favorite examples of that kind of perfect marriage between the creative and the messaging side of it is Absolut Vodka.
Right.
I mean, there's nobody that doesn't remember, or at least nobody that's of a certain age that doesn't remember the Absolut Vodka campaigns.
Sure.
And I mean, it doesn't get any more clear than that. Every one of them was a vodka bottle. It was a bottle of Absolut. It had the name right on it, Absolut whatever. But super creative in execution and how they did it, and certainly made a point and got through, but was nobody, you couldn't question what the ad was for.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I had at least one friend who used to collect the ads. I mean, literally would rip them out of magazines because they were, they were works of art, basically.
It's a textbook ad campaign. I was taught about that in college too. I mean, I'm sure people still are. It's a perfect marriage of the two, I think, and just really shows you how those executions can work in creative ways and be very clear. You know, huge branding campaign with that whole thing. It was just, very well done. That's what people strive to do in their advertising. Try to reach something like that where it's really, super creative and clear.
Yeah. Well, and that's, the other kind of, I guess, the other side of this episode and the way that I introed it is when you have something that is kind of just designed to be clear and to the point, but isn't, because there's too much going on. There's, we've struggled with that in our own advertising in particular, because we do a lot of things here. It's hard to kind of nail down what we do. And for a long time, we tried to find ways to represent the kind of complete picture of what we do, from a marketing standpoint, but doing that in a way that was clear to people who might not know what they would get from a really comprehensive marketing company. Because usually, you deal with a marketing firm, they're kind of doing your creative and they're
Right.
coming up with your campaigns, but when it comes to actually printing or mailing or building your website or executing a lot of those campaigns, that all gets outsourced to one to a printing company, another to a tech firm, another to and for us, having all of that in-house was difficult to try to differentiate what we do and who we are. And really what we were pushing was the everything under one roof, and the ease of just knowing that if something's wrong with the way that a print piece came out or whatever, you have one phone call to make, and there's one place that's going to answer for it. Or if we have tight deadlines on things, the fact that we can control from top to bottom, we can control that production schedule. We know, if it comes down to, hey, we got to get it done, then we can have our production staff work overtime and get it done. Where a traditional marketing agency doesn't really have that kind of control. And we've struggled. We did struggle for a long time trying to represent all of that. And really, finally, what we kind of came down to is we just kind of can't.
Right.
We need to be a little more focused in our approach and in the way that we market ourselves, and maybe market some of the benefits.
That's it, exactly.
In general of working with us, whether it's meeting deadlines or some of that kind of stuff.
How we make it easier for clients rather than the specific services.
Yeah, but we see it a lot with clients, and it's a lot of what we struggled with, where we didn't want to. If we put an ad together, we didn't want 12 bullet points on, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do this. And so we struggled with trying to come up with a way, either graphically or verbally to wrap all that into a nice, neat little container, because we wanted to be clear in our messaging, but really couldn't figure out a way to do that, because I still stand by that's probably near impossible to do that in a short form ad. But we see it a lot with our clients too, where it's, all right, you gotta, make sure you let people know we do this, and you end up with an ad that's all text, and it's nobody's gonna read that. That's not gonna grab somebody's attention. It's not gonna be effective. That would be like Geico at the end of that commercial going through, hey, we do car insurance and we do homeowners insurance and we do motorcycle insurance and we do that, and kind of where that's not going to stick.
Yeah. We have a lot of clients, I think, that have this same issue, where their services list is huge and they want to list everything they can, but you really have to sway them away from that in terms of their advertising and marketing. They can put a list of their services on their website, but it doesn't have to be in every ad. It's just too much clutter and too much information.
And I think a big part of what I've learned over the years in terms of that is it's a common desire right? And it even comes down to not even just service lists, but who is going to get that piece of marketing material. Who are we targeting? And the desire from most people, I think it's the kind of really natural to say, well, I want to reach as many people as possible with as much of what I do as possible, because that's going to cast the widest net and bring me the best results. When the reality of that is the complete opposite. That's when you try to reach everybody, you end up reaching nobody. But if you kind of could narrow that down and say, well, instead of telling everybody about everything that we do, let's start segmenting what you do and targeting individuals that are going to be interested in each one of those particular things. Right. That's when you really are going to start delivering results. And because then it's a clear message to a highly targeted audience versus a cluttered message to everybody.
Right. And doing it in a creative way is the challenge. I mean, that's what, for me, that's what it is reaching them, with that creative message. And I know, we've gone a little bit back and forth with things in the past where, I kind of feel it's okay to make the end user think a little bit when they're looking at an ad. Maybe you're using a metaphor or creative copy that's not direct and to the point. In what we do internally, I mean, this is kind of where we started the whole thing, is we would have a conversation and you would want the message much clearer to the point. And in my opinion, I would think that it was just a little boring and uncreative to do that. And it's that middle ground that we really need to try to achieve in everything we do.
Yeah, and from that standpoint too, I know that your opinion on that when it comes to the way that we market ourselves is different than it would be for certain clients too, because our ability to be creative is part of what we sell.
Sure.
And I understand that from your standpoint too, where that's part of what we're showcasing is, if we kind of put out something that's just kind of boring and to the point, it might help sell maybe a particular service, but it doesn't really showcase what we can do from a creative aspect and a creative approach. And, and so I understand your struggle when it comes to that too, because I feel the same way where, I want it to be creative and clear and to the point. To me, I always kind of feel like if it's not clear, then you've kind of lost everything. Where, that ideal scenario obviously is the creative, clear message. To me, I always default to, well, if you can't find a way to be creative and clear, then be clear. Make sure people know what you are offering and why it benefits them to buy that service. But yeah, I mean, and it takes us usually a long time to come up with to collaborate, because there's a lot of back and forth that goes into it.
Well, it's a challenge for me. I'll come up with something, a creative headline or a graphic that's, maybe it is a metaphor or something like that. And to me, it's completely clear. But then when we go over it together, you bring it up that it's not. And that's kind of where I have to step outside myself for a minute and say, could this not be clear to somebody else besides a creative person or me,
Right. Well, and that's really touches on, I think it was 3 weeks ago, the episode that we did about who the target of your marketing is too. Right. And that's an important portion of what we're talking about here is if you're trying to reach creatives and people who are creative themselves, then kind of erring more towards the side of creativity over clarity might actually be a good approach. I mean, that might be your way of grabbing that person's attention and, really kind of bringing them into that journey with you where, if you're looking for somebody who is just looking. They have it, kind of a simple problem that needs to be solved, and they're just looking for somebody that can solve that problem, right? It's like we were talking recently. I was showing you an ad that I get from a tree service in
Right.
my area. Guy that cuts down trees and grinds stumps, and the graphical representation is terrible. I mean, it's not good looking. And it's corny, and but it works because of all those things. It certainly isn't the way that I would represent our business, but it's memorable, and it kind of just gets the point across. And the bottom line is it's a tree, and it needs to get cut down, and this guy can cut down that tree.
Right.
So it doesn't need to be super creative, and it doesn't need to be, the kind of the corniness factor makes it a little stickier, and it's something that that is going to be a little more memorable because of that. So I think that's important. Is know your target and your audience too, and know
Right.
which of those is going to resonate more with that audience based on what you sell and who you're trying to reach.
Right. Don't do a werewolf ad for a bank. That's the idea.
I think that's a good way to wrap it up.